The what, the how, and the all-important why. Purpose and intention of this clip is to hammer home the point that when you lead from the why, a lot of things become a lot easier. When you lead from the what and the how, then things will be more difficult. But this sense of purpose that is hidden behind the word why, this sense of integrity, is quite difficult to grasp, because it is a little bit, ethereal. It's a bit difficult to grasp. So what we need to do is to think about what does it mean for an organization to have a solid sense of purpose, and a company, or rather an individual. There is a phrase in English which I believe translates into most of the world's languages, which is the following: what do you stand for? And this phrase suggests that you stand for something that is very important to you, that you believe in. It represents your belief system. It represents your sense of integrity, your sense of values. What do you stand for? And if you take this picture in your mind of a person standing on 2 feet with a very firm standing position, then that can be this sense of purpose and why. If we take that image a little bit further up the body, and let's suggest that the right hand is generally the hand of action. And so the right hand is the hand that does stuff. And that can be represented by, what do I do, actually? And then the left hand, again, there is a German phrase which says mit links vom Herzen. So with your left hand from your heart. The left hand is closest to the heart. And the left hand represents the way and the how I do things. It represents the emotion, the leadership style, the method, the things that you do, the tone of voice, the way that you do things. All of your leadership skills and experience comes in to this sense of how. So it doesn't get any easier than that. Let's try and clear it up with an example. I met a chap who had moved from one team to another. He was responsible now for a group of 8 senior, and they'd been in the business for a long, long time. He used Scrum principles. So Scrum is a project management methodology. And in a very, very small nutshell, it means adherence to planning sessions, to regular daily meetings, and then at the end of a phase of work to a retrospective. And he liked using this methodology. He'd used it in the past with all of his teams. He was a real aficionado. He developed his skills in these areas according to the book and the way that the agile methodologies suggested he run these things. He tweaked them. He made them as good as he was able to. He liked them a lot. His new team didn't like them very much. And they rebelled at several of the ideas because they'd done things differently in the past. And they really rebelled when it came to the retrospective. And so he tried to, in the first instance, he said, I was trying to explain what I did and why that particular structure of a retrospective was a good one, and probably one that they hadn't seen before or thought about before. And that didn't work. And then I tried to tell them how I did it, and the fact that it was good fun and it was fast moving. And we used a lot of group work and pair work in order to put the points on the table. And we had an interesting system of visualization of how that worked. So I tried to convince them with my how, and that didn't work. And he said that after 2 failed retrospectives, he really did have to go back to the why. And so in advance of the next one, in the planning session for the next series of work packages, he said, ladies, gentlemen, we will do a retrospective because it is integral to my requirement to have everybody speaking the truth at one specific instance of the project, and to put all of the uncomfortable things on the table and put all of the good habits that we're creating onto the table as well. This is absolutely fundamental for something that I need as a leader, and it's something that I will drive to achieve in all things. And he said that he got the feeling that even though the group was still negative, the penny did drop to a certain extent. And then he was able to start getting better quality out of his retrospectives. I asked him how long it took. Any guesses?
A month?
It took him 5 months. So it took him, that was every 2 weeks, it took him around 10 different sprints, 10 different retrospectives until he felt that even the most negative of the people were finally on board with what it was. A couple of people changed instantly. A couple of people took their time around into changing into the new. And he said he had to repeat this message again and again and again in different concept texts and different constructs. Joanna.
So what I understand from that is, if you don't have the why from the beginning, if you don't have the why in the back of your mind as a question to answer at all times, then you might really get lost in the details. Once you are able to articulate the why, you inspire people to do the right thing for the right reasons, because you genuinely believe in the importance of doing so. Now, why it's important to have the why always in your mind as a leader. When you lead from the what, you get lost in the details. When you lead from the how, you will put too much focus on yourself. But the why comes into a development discussion in the way that you build up a team, in how you run a meeting or instigate your planning sessions. So thinking about it, discussing it, even formalizing it in a way or another, it should be always something to think about. If you differentiate yourself by always having a sense of why in the back of your mind, that will drive you and the people around you, and it will create traction for your ideas, for what you would like to implement within the team. An example of what could be, in terms of the models we have been looking at during the leadership journey, could be the leadership cockpit, could be Eisenhower's matrix, the SMART goals model, the retrospectives, the team development cycle, and I could go on and on and on. An example of the how could be a list of internal competencies that the company is represented by. For instance, focusing on people, or people come first, or walk the talk. Just a few examples. Mike, how do you find the why?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we've established that, of course, leading from the why is such a foundational idea in terms of good leadership. The question then becomes, where do you find your why, which is not always an easy question to understand. So I'm just going to show you briefly one model that when I was at this model, I just found it very well designed and incredibly insightful to kind of demonstrate to me the aspects that can come together in terms of finding that why. So Tim, if you could switch the visual for us, please.
Sure.
So as you can see, this model is called Ikigai, and it comes from Japan. The word Ikigai translates to a reason for being. So we can define this as a sense of purpose. And it really presents to us a way in which we can figure out what are we doing and what is it giving us and what is it maybe not giving us as well. So Ikigai is designed as 4 interlocking circles. So when we look at the top circle, you can see it's what you love. So the thing that you love, the thing that brings you kind of that sense of connection and attachment to. The second circle on the left-hand side is then what are you good at? So where are the skills that you're bringing into it? Where are this sense that you can actually connect to it and be a kind of positive influence in this area? The right-hand circle then is what does the world need? So in what way is what you're doing having a positive contribution to the people around you, to the world, and in what sense do you understand that? And the fourth circle at the bottom then is what you can be paid for. So of course, it's absolutely important that you are able to be sustained in terms of what you're doing. So as you can see, where they interlock, there are different words. There's passion, there's mission, there's profession, there's vocation, and there are others in this model as well. But right in the center, where all 4 of those circles come together, is the Japanese concept of Ikigai. So when you think about your tasks, when you think about your work, it's really useful to look at it in relation to this model and think, okay, is it contributing to all four of these circles? And if not, why not? And what maybe do I need to explore? What do I need to change in order to bring in the circles that it's not quite hitting at the moment? So I find Ikigai very, very quite inspirational and motivational in terms of understanding my own sense of why.
It's funny, when I was 16, I got a job in a fish and chip shop in Eastbourne in England. And I was a cook before that, and then I became a waiter. And I realized very quickly that my skills as a waiter were exactly what the world needed. So we had a group of people coming in. It was raining cats and dogs outside. It was freezing cold, and grandma, grandpa, husband, wife, 3 screaming kids come in, and I looked at them and I said, right, they need me to be the best possible waiter in the world, and I'm getting paid for it. So, that's really perfect. And I'm really good at it. So I, went over to the table. I promised the children a great thing in British culture, which is called a deep fried Mars bar, if they promised to create a beautiful work of art at a separate table away from mum and dad. And they were well into this. And so, and then I made assumptions about what the adults wanted in terms of drinks, and just took them over and put them on the table and saying, I've made an executive decision. These are your drinks. If you don't want to pay for them, don't. But I think you need to get started with the enjoyment part of this day. And, they were, I had them wrapped around my finger for the 2.5 hours that they were there before they went home to get on their train. And during that 2.5 hours, I realized that I really loved doing that particular job, because it brought happiness instantly to a group of people that were not looking for it and not expecting it. It was like this sense of customer satisfaction, and customer service was something that was really, really dear to my heart. I just realize it now, Mike, when I'm looking at this, that's what it was. My boss came home 2 weeks later, and he was looking at what I was doing, and he was saying, look, Tim, we have a policy here. You get them in, you get them out within 45 minutes. If they're here for longer than an hour, it's too long. And I'm looking around this deserted restaurant and saying, nobody ever comes here anyway. Are you mad? He says, 45 minutes. And all of that stuff that you're doing with the deep fried Mars bars, no way. We don't do that. That's not part of our business. And so I was confronted with the fact that the organization's sense of purpose, which was my boss's sense of purpose, and mine, they didn't match at all. Yeah. It could have been simply I didn't like him and he didn't like me, but there was something more substantial behind that. We had very, 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 very different ideas of what we wanted from this whole restaurant experience. And of course, I started looking around for a new job pretty quickly after that, till I could find a company that kind of embodied my sense of principles. Whoa, I was only 16. I wasn't thinking about any of this stuff at the time. One question is, does your sense of purpose have to fit with the sense of purpose of the company? Do they have to be the same? And I think the answer is, if they're not the same, if they're too far apart, that's not going to work. It's not going to work out for you in the long run. But there is a difference between the organizational sense of purpose and your own individual, because, the statistics are pretty clear on this. People join companies, but people leave people. Yeah, they leave their leaders. They leave the people structures that are there. They don't leave a company. They leave the relationships and their boss. And so it's a pretty sobering thought for any leader that when people leave, they're leaving you. They're not leaving your organization. They'll package it in many, many different ways. I can grow, I can earn more, etc. But at the end of the day, this sense of purpose and why is something that makes people stay. It makes people stay and feel very, very happy and motivated about working within your framework. So the what, the how, and the why is a very slow burning concept that stays with you for years and should be questioned at all times. Have a final comment. A participant, he said, when approached with the question, what do you actually do with this? He said, well, he writes it on a post-it. He tries to formulate it for himself. He tries to say, why am I here? And writes it on a post-it. And then he sticks the post-it on his screen, and then he loses the post-it, and then he finds the post-it 3 or 4 months later, and then he looks at it and screws it up and throws it in the bin, and he writes another post-it and sticks it on his screen. And he said it's an instrumental and way of constantly keeping this in your mind's eye, putting it in front of you and ensuring that you are driving for this sense of purpose within everything that you do.